Good day and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Hoyani. It was a morning session that I'll never forget. This was Judge Ratha at his vintage best. You know, he came out through and through this morning as being totally biased in favor of the prosecution. The ruling that he made this morning is probably the worst ruling that he has ever made, ever since the Senzo MEYIWA trial started. It all began with Baloi. There was Brigadier Ginindas. Brigadier Ginindas had to be re-examined. But Baloi took a totally different turn. He took a totally different turn and said that the state would like to lead the evidence of Dr. Ali. You'll recall Dr. Ali is that doctor who was procured by Advocate Mnisi to disprove the fact that Mthomisi Mncube ever had a gold tooth. For all intents and purposes, at that stage, Dr. Ali was testifying on behalf of the defense, and he became a defense witness. And that was what Mnisi was telling the court this morning. So Baloi wanted to call Dr. Ali in a move unprecedented in South African criminal law history. In spite of the fact that Dr. Ali has already testified, although it is through the contents of his report being put to Sergeant Mabasa. The judge ruled that the defense is at liberty to call Dr. Ali. Judge Ratha also went on to say that the doctor's report that had been put to, among others, Warrant Officer Mabasa, had not been properly filed in court, so that it was not before court. In other words, it was not evidence before court, and it was not on record. That came from the judge. It didn't come from the prosecution. On his own, of his own volition, that is the position that he took. How shocking it was. The second issue that the prosecution wanted to do, and he ruled in their favor in this regard also, was to lead hearsay evidence. You see, there is an affidavit to start with by one Mr. Bailey. Mr. Bailey is like the news editor at ENCA. Mr. Bailey had deposed to an affidavit, and in that affidavit, Mr. Bailey said, I know nothing about what happened on the 26th of October 2014 in the Khumalo house. I was not even in South Africa at that time. I was in China. So Mr. Bailey makes that affidavit, and on the basis of that affidavit, Brigadier Ginindas is then brought before court to testify about some footage in the possession of the prosecution. Because it all started way back with Advocate Mngomezulu. I think it was sometime in August 2024 when he put it. I think it was Mangena that Longwe had been injured on that day during the altercation, call it what you will, in the Khumalo house. So the prosecution wanted to come with a video that the defense had already seen. That does not say anything. It's a 34-second video. But with that video, the prosecution was seeking to show that on the 27th, the day after Senzo MEYIWA was shot, apparently Baloi can be seen walking without a limb or any visible injury to himself, contrary to what had been alleged by Advocate Ngumezulu, that Baloi shot himself during that altercation in the Kumalo house. So Ginindas is brought to court to testify about this video footage. Video footage which is pure hearsay. He has got nothing to do with that video footage. And all that he can tell the court is his own opinions about what is depicted on that video footage. And the defense counsels rightly argued that, our clients don't even know Longwetwala. They don't know him. And there's no way that Brigadier Ginindas, as he identifies whatever he identifies in that video, will be able to definitively say to us that is Longwetwala. So it was a heated exchange. Another interesting issue that was raised was, why is the defense, the prosecution rather, afraid of calling Longwetwala to testify? Because you see, Longwetwala is readily available. Why should the court be played a video, probably in which Longwetwala appears, and that video has to be testified to by way of hearsay by Brigadier Ginindas? What is the prosecution afraid of? Nisi kept on asking. They are perhaps afraid, Nisi went on before he was stopped by the judge, that he'll probably come before court and tell exactly what happened in that house on that day, contrary to what we're being told. It was at that stage that Judge Ratha interjected and said, no, don't tell us about your speculations. So those are the morning's proceedings. First, the prosecution is at liberty to abuse, I won't even say use, abuse a witness, Dr. Ali, who's clearly a defense witness. Secondly, they are at liberty to use hearsay evidence through Ginindas. I don't know what to make of this. His ruling was just to the effect that that evidence is relevant. But a catchphrase, that I want you to remember as this trial progresses is, he said, the prosecution cannot bring evidence before this court without any reason. That is what the judge said. At which stage, Attorney Ramusipili told him, look, the prosecution has always brought evidence which sometimes there was no need to bring. That was, immaterial and served no purpose. But the judge was of the belief that if the prosecution, brings evidence before the court, then that evidence is important evidence that the court must hear, without any regard at all to the prejudicial impact of that evidence on the defense case. I've said in my opener that this was vintage Judge Ratha. So thereafter, he made a ruling in favor of the prosecution, which is traditional on his part. So we'll see how this evidence by Ginindas, as he identifies by way of hearsay what is depicted in that video footage goes. But let me repeat again, this was vintage Judge Ratha, biased to the core. Thank you very much and have a nice day.